What's up, guys? It's I Will Dominate from Cloud9, and today we'll be interviewing the new head coach of Cloud9, which is Reignover, and Jack, obviously owner of Cloud9. So yeah, I guess we'll just get into it with an easy question here. But one thing for Reignover that we could start on is how he felt joining C9. When you joined this organization as the academy coach, did you ever think that you would actually be replacing, such a historic coach such as Reaper? Because Reaper was one of the best coaches in North America for a large amount of years.
Not sure if I should talk about all the details, but even before I decided to go head coach for academy, I sort of felt like I am sort of ready for the coaching like LCS team. It could be C9, it could not be C9, but I end up just giving myself like one more year to like actually train myself and be ready so that I can actually like perform well and do good stuffs when it actually like happens to be LCS coach. But I kind of how should I say? It wasn't like non-existent option, I would say, to become head coach for C9 LCS team.
Awesome. And Jack, did you have this idea? Because obviously there's a bunch of coaches that have came through. You've had Rapid Star, West Rice has been a coach for a while here, Reaper, and now Reignover. Did you think that Reignover was the person to be the transition for head coach role once Reaper was went separate ways?
Frankly speaking, at the end of 2019, I actually offered Reignover the head coach job because we already had conversations with Reaper about his future at Cloud9. He was considering some other roles inside Cloud9, and I talked with Reignover, and he's like, "Wow, that sounds fun, but maybe I need a little more time, like running a team in academy. I'm not quite sure." And there was some discussions around how we could make this work, and maybe the natural transition would be 1 year in academy and then becoming the head coach of Cloud9. So this is something that had been in the works for a long time, over a year, and so it's definitely something that we had discussed and had some plans around, so it wasn't out of the blue.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You've obviously had a lot of success with training new talents, and that was something that I guess from the community they would say was one of Reaper's biggest strengths, was that he was able to incorporate rookies from academy or amateur into the LCS team pretty seamlessly. Do you feel like any of that will be lost with this transition, or do you think that it was more just a Cloud9 org thing on prepping these rookies and having this talent farm within the organization?
I think it's something that both Reaper and I really liked and wanted to promote, was developing internally. So it was something that we both cared to do and wanted to see, and I think it's one of the reasons why Reaper and I got along for so long and so well, is that we had a shared vision of developing talent internally and bringing new people into LCS.
Makes sense. So for Reignover here, there is going to be one of the players confirmed by the time this interview airs, joining you from the academy team onto the LCS team, which is Fudge. How was it working with him in academy? I guess for fans that haven't watched much academy, what was the main reasoning as to why you guys decided to promote such a young talent over a historic, one of the best top laners in the league in Licorice?
So my opinion about Fudge is that yes, Licorice is insane. I really, really like him. As I working in C9, like he's probably one of my favorite player, or I could say like favorite person in C9. It just Fudge, I really, really enjoyed working with him in this year. He is very good teammate, and he's also a very good player. Like anything what I said would not matter, because Fudge will just show in the stage and in front of everyone.
He's that good.
He's
that good, huh?
Yeah, he's really good. So I really believe Fudge can do very well. The thing is, even though he's sort of like new player to come in, like he has all those like fundamentals. He can play carry role very well. He's very confident on it. He's very good at playing weak side too. So whatever upcoming meta or whatever upcoming play style we apply to the team, he is ready to fit all those styles. So and also his communication is very good. His side lane is very good. Obviously, he has a lot of parts to improve, but since he is very motivated and hardworking player, I really believe that he can, like, even though he doesn't perform well at the beginning of the split or beginning of the season, but I just really believe that he can like pull it off and he can like improve and match all the level of the good players.
Yeah. I guess for Jack, this was a huge thing that just happened in the offseason. The transfer from OCE players being considered imports to being residents of NA. I assume that no one really knew this a couple years ago when everyone started picking up these OCE players. I mean, the main struggle that they always had was you had to compare OCE players against the top Korean players, top European players, and value them at the same level because they both took the same slot. Now with imports being or with OCE players not being labeled as imports anymore, was that a huge surprise to you? Like, did that completely change your mindset for this offseason once you realized, like, hey, we can actually play Fudge with an import mid, import bot?
Yeah. So if you go back in time into 2019 free agency period, we were told that that Australian players wouldn't count against the import rule for Academy, but that had no bearing on the LCS. And immediately I was thinking, there's a good chance that this is something that if it goes well in the 2020 season, that I could see the LCS also allow this rule for maybe one or two players to be considered NA in LCS. I hit up the league about it. They're like, "No, Jack, you're wrong. That's never going to happen." But I was like, "We'll see."
Okay.
And as the season ended, the rules did not change. And I was disappointed, but we actually did consider like, hey, like Fudge is pretty amazing. That has so is Licorice. Licorice is incredible, but we could see Fudge being the future of Cloud9. Is this worth actually giving up an import spot for, and that would require putting in probably either someone for Palafox or someone into AD carry, and we went around on it a bit and ultimately decided, hey, that doesn't make sense. What are we thinking? We're going to stick with the same roster and just run it back, and these are great guys. I mean, we really believe in the last year's roster. Let's just do it again. But when Riot did actually end up changing the rules so that Fudge was considered NA, we had to revisit this thing, and with that change, it was enough to tip the scales into, okay, let's do this with Fudge. It's time to do it. It feels bad because we did make the announcement that we weren't going to change the roster and that we meant that, but the reality is the conditions of the entire league changed, and we have to our decisions have to be flexible to the conditions changing, which is why we've come up with this outcome.
So when it comes to the end of the season, right, like it definitely was not the result that everyone wanted. Obviously, C9 was the most dominant team we've probably seen in NA history in spring. Like that was the most. I think that just in terms of pure wins to losses, it was like 35-2, including a bunch of best of ones, which people have to remember. Even the team that Reignover was on here, the Immortals team, when they were 16-2, those weren't all individual best of ones. So winning that many games in a row just shows like a level of dominance that we hadn't seen before. And because things didn't work out, was that the main reason for this change? Like, or did you have this plan going into it, like regardless of if C9 did well and went to Worlds? How was this like decision really like brought about when you guys decided, hey, we're going to go into the season with a new coach?
The departure of Reaper, like, as I mentioned earlier, really was discussed in 2019. And we started this year with an agreement between me and and Reignover and Reaper that this would be the year of transition, that Reaper would leave on a high note with the team, and that Reignover would get some time and to really solidify his coaching skills and academy. And everyone was thinking, okay, that's the plan, the beginning of the year. Then spring happens, and it was we just did incredibly well, and we started thinking, I don't know, maybe we just keep this going. Maybe do we really want to mess with this? And then summer showed up, and actually, never mind. Our plan at the beginning of the year sounds pretty good. Let's stick with it.
Yeah. Okay, so for Rainover specifically, just to get into a little bit of your coaching philosophy, what do you think is your advantage over other coaches within the LCS? I mean, from the outside looking in, when you compare yourself to other people that are coaching, with the exception of probably Bjergsen now, you've had, like one of the absolute best careers. I mean, if you look 4 or 5 years back, you were one of the best junglers in the world. Do you think that just being such a good player gives you an advantage when it comes to coaching, or like where do you think your strength lies as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, my strength as a coach is definitely coming from the experience of pro playing because I would say my biggest strength compared to other coaches. I mean, honestly, I don't really know too much about how the other coaches work, but what I know by myself, what I'm good at is just generally when I watch the game, since I know a lot about jungle, I know what jungle can do and what jungle should not do, and what is bad for jungle, what is good for jungle. It's just like generally all the movements from the game is coming from junglers' pressure and what junglers do. So I'm really good at like seeing what's happening in the early game to mid game to late game and what we should do, what went wrong. I feel like most of the times when I watch players like see the game, they usually like focus more on like specific stuffs that happen, like it could be like fight, it could be lane, but I feel like I approach way more toward like a team stuff, like what we should do as a team here, what went wrong, what is the win condition, what is the logic we should put in for a certain champion, for a certain team comp. So all those just like come to me at the beginning of the thought, like when I just watched the team playing. So I would say that is my biggest strength, knowing exactly what we should do and able to, if I don't know, if I'm not sure, I'm able to discuss with the players about my thoughts. So I just like share my opinion, and usually my opinion is very good. And if there is something wrong with my opinion, I'm very like flexible and able to talk with players about it and then like actually make a good logic. Um, and my problem with working in academy is that like I always bring up like good logic and good um, a way of playing the certain comps, but it wasn't in a level that uh, where I can actually test it out and actually like see if it works because it's just way too random. The game becomes way too random. It could be from enemy team, it could be from us. It's just like the basic fundamentals are not getting well, so I couldn't really like actually improve myself as a coaching staff. But that's why like I'm like really excited like upcoming um, staying and then spending my year with such a good players.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Did you always think you were going to become a head coach? I mean, when you were a player, the way that people talked about you is that you were like an extremely intelligent player. You weren't like the mechanical god. You were. I don't know if you played one Lee Sin game in the last 2 or 3 years of your career, but you always knew where to be on the map, and you always understood like how to control a game as a jungler. So with that knowledge, I mean, yeah, did you think that you were just naturally going to become a coach after being a player?
Before we move on, I was actually pretty good at mechanically, but when I was actually playing in Fnatic Immortals, I was pretty good mechanically too. But yeah,
Where's the Lee Sin then?
listen, no. Listen was like mental block champion, and also I actually
Oh, okay.
generally thought the listen was not good during those
Same,
times.
same
So
actually.
yeah, for the question, I mean, when I was player, I was just way too focused on the game, like performing by myself. So I haven't really think about anything about coaching. But as time goes, I just had some small thoughts that I might be pretty good at coaching and actually experiencing in C9, being assistant coach for Reaper. I actually enjoyed it, and then it wasn't like stressful at all. It was more of like fun and excited about the new stuff because for me as a person, I really like having facing like new stuffs, facing new opponents, facing new challenge. It's always like giving me most motivation, and coaching area definitely gives me a lot of motivation and a lot of areas to improve as a person. So I really enjoy it, and right now I'm just generally very happy that I made this decision, and I'm very confident and excited.
For Jack, I would ask, it seems like every single person that becomes a coach of Cloud9 is a former pro player, right? Westrise, you have Reignover, Reaper, Rapid Star. Is that your philosophy towards like coaches? Like to be a really good coach, the best coaches are players that were really good before at the game themselves. Because we've seen other people that have coaches that never were pro players. Like for example, G2 is Grabs, and Fnatic is more in your boat where they have Mithy, who is a great player for a while. So did you have this mentality where you think that pro players make the best coaches, or did it just kind of work out like you ended up getting a bunch of ex-pros to coach C9?
Yeah, over time, I've found that the coaches that had a pro career were able to understand the game in a way that immediately got the respect of the players. And it might be a combination of just the players not respecting people who didn't have a pro career, as well as I just haven't really seen non-pros actually have a understanding of the game that's required for the pros to immediately click with them. And so at this point, I would still be open to coaches that don't have a pro career. I mean, obviously, but they just need to prove themselves to the players that they actually, whatever they're saying makes sense. So I don't think it would necessarily be a prerequisite, but I think you're much more often going to find people that can actually coach at the highest level with people who have like fairly recent pro careers.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. So I guess the mentality towards this, change is something that I would want to just address. Like from the outside looking in, people might view this as a rebuilding year. You're trying out somebody who's never coached at the top tier pro level before, as well as new top laner. We're not sure about the rest of the roster yet, but with Fudge coming in instead of Licorice, is the mentality still like you think that this is the best roster possible to win a championship, or is this looking forward to like maybe not in spring being the best team, but like in summer you'll have the best chance at competing well in Worlds and winning the summer split? How do you see like the progression or the trajectory of this roster being from players to coach?
I think this roster is going to be just as good compared to the other teams that are in LCS in spring, and I think that there's a distinct possibility that with time they can be even better. So I feel like it's possible that their ceiling is even higher than last year's. So I'm pretty excited to see what they do.
Awesome. Well, that has been our interview here announcing the new head coach of Cloud9, which is Reignover. Thank you once again, Jack and Reignover, for sitting down and having this discussion with me. And I wish you guys the best of luck. Thank you guys all for watching this video.